FBI, Inside the Crime Lab, is a production of Alabama Public Television's IQ Learning Network.
Hello, I'm Jim Richards, and here's what's happening. 26 weeks have passed since we first reported about the release of Chronic X. Now that's the mysterious gas that's destroying the fun of young men and women everywhere. Chronic X gas is composed of an undetermined compound, and though it's non-lethal, it still leaves horrible temporary effects on any child who is exposed to it. They become humorless, colorless, enthusiasticless zombies. Zombies who can best be described as, well, adults. Over the past 26 weeks, Chronic X strikes have occurred all over the country. But who is behind them? The alleged perpetrator is known only as Anonymous 99, a suspect who's only been identified by this online avatar that the criminal uses to hide his or her true identity. Anonymous 99 continues to taunt law enforcement officials who have not yet been able to stop the reign of comical terror. Is there anyone out there who can stop this threat?
We interrupt this broadcast for a very important mission briefing. Begin encrypted connection. Transmission in 3, 2, 1.
Hi everyone, I'm Alex, Chief of Action for the Junior Enigma Team, or JET. Sorry to hijack your regularly scheduled programming, but we need your help. As you're already well aware, the kids of the country are in a panic. Chronic X, the prank gas that's temporarily turning all us kids into stuffed shirts, is spreading. And unfortunately, the gas is so powerful, it's affecting even some of our best agents while they're trying to investigate the crime.
Only 249 days till tax day? Better file them now.
That used to be our class clown. See, this is why we need your help. Agents that we can communicate with safely from remote locations currently unaffected by Chronic X. So it's up to you, and only you, to stop this epidemic before it's too late. And how are we going to do that? By unmasking Anonymous 99 and stopping his or her out-of-control pranking once and for all. Thanks to our experts in the field, we've narrowed down who he or she really is to 5 suspects. And today we're going to figure out who is truly behind the mask. And how are we going to do that? With the help of one of the greatest crime-busting organizations in the world, the FBI. The Federal Bureau of Investigation is one of the premier law enforcement forces in the world and is home to some of the most intrepid and skilled crime fighters ever, with access to the top crime-fighting resources on the planet. The FBI is like the real-life Avengers, plus the Justice League, plus the Incredibles, even the Paw Patrol, times like 11. In other words, they're more than capable of helping us get to the bottom of this mystery.
You copy? Alex!
Dorian, is that you?
Yeah, and I got some good news for you.
Oh, this is Dorian, one of our field agents who's on the trail of Anonymous 99. What's going on out there, Dorian?
We may have just had a major breakthrough in the case, Alex. I'm here at a classified location with the FBI's evidence response team. We may have just found some forensic evidence left behind by our masked villain that may just help us find out who he or she really is.
Ooh, forensic evidence?
Yeah, evidence found through scientific means.
Yeah, but no, I mean, what exactly is the evidence you found?
Well, I don't want to say too much right now. Besides, it's got to go back to the lab before we can make any determination.
That's right, the lab. Like I said, the FBI has the best crime-fighting resources on the planet, including the world's greatest crime lab.
And today, JET agents, you'll get a chance to see inside one of these facilities, up close and personal, where we'll see how the amazing men and women who operate the lab use science in their procedures and methodology.
What cutting-edge technology they use to solve even the toughest crimes.
And we'll find out the educational backgrounds each one of these experts have to help any of you future would-be agents on your path to the academy.
This is an amazing break, Dorian. I can't wait to see what you found.
Yeah, me too. I'm really excited to see everything when we get it back to the lab.
Where we're standing by waiting to hear what our experts have to say.
Kirsten, Daphne, was wondering when you check in.
You know we're excited for this break, Alex. And we're excited to talk with experts in trace evidence.
And chemistry.
To try and determine which of our 5 suspects are
me.
Your encryption is only marginally better than some local coffee shop. I got in minutes. This is a warning, Jet agents. You are forcing my hand, and unless you can stop me every step of the way, I'll unleash Chronic X in every region of the country. The West, the North, the South. Once affected by my Chronic X, you won't even be able to watch paint dry because it will be too exciting. This is your last chance to stop me. Try if you dare.
Whoa. Oh, we're back. But Anonymous 99 is on to us, so we gotta work fast. So, everyone, sign off for now and get to work. We've gotta stop this villain now. This is getting serious. I think we need some more help from the FBI, so later in the broadcast, we'll be joined by a couple of real-life experts from the FBI who will be here to answer your questions and to help us unmask Anonymous 99. We're also going to need some help making key decisions throughout our journey. After each field agent has given his or her report, we'll look back at our 5 suspects and attempt to rule one out based on the evidence we find. The question will be in the form of a multiple choice poll and will be displayed on the screen like this. You can help us unmask Anonymous 99 through your participation in our online poll.
Think you could weed me out, huh? Well, periodically through this supposedly encrypted broadcast, I will challenge all of your wits with mind-bending questions about the FBI crime lab. Questions will be multiple choice and will be presented to you with possible answers like this. You can use your inferior technologies to participate in answering these questions, the same way you try to solve my identity. If you fail to answer these questions, I will release Chronic X on one of these 3 regions of the country. But if you answer correctly, that region will be spared for the present.
Okay, we've taken control again, but we've really got to hurry. So let's get started and get inside the crime lab.
Alright, Jet Agents, time is running out and we got a lot of work to do to unmask this villain. So let's not waste any more time. Here we are at a crime scene, near where some Chronic X was released. In order to find out who Anonymous 99 really is, we need to find some physical evidence at the scene of the crime. And to help us with that, we have the FBI's elite evidence response team scouring the area right now to find any shred of evidence the culprit may have left behind. Thank you for helping us get to the bottom of our mystery.
Yeah, of course, Dorian.
So what's your job here with the FBI entail?
So I'm a special agent with the Evidence Response Team Unit, which basically entails training, equipping, and supervising the field teams that you see out here today. I'm also trained to respond to the crime scenes like they are and collect evidence.
So what is the Evidence Response Team?
The Evidence Response Team is a specialty team with the FBI, and our mission is to collect evidence, identify the evidence, package it, and document it, and basically preserve everything that's on the scene. We do that both here in the United States as well as worldwide.
What are your procedures when you first get to a crime scene?
Well, when we first respond to a crime scene, we have to do so very cautiously, taking in mind not to disturb any evidence that might be from the suspect entering the scene or exiting. So it's a very slow and methodical approach, and we start to look at the crime scene at kind of a surface level to just look for very obvious items of evidence or trace elements. Once we are done doing that, we take a more vigorous approach where we're really trying to find out where that suspect may have hidden or concealed evidence from us.
So it sounds like what you guys do is a lot like the scientific method. How do you use science in your work?
I use a ton of science in the work I do, whether it's investigating crime scenes that involve chemical, biological, nuclear, or radiological, and even explosive materials. We also kind of throw physics in there, with it being science, heavy in the mathematics, when you're looking at like bullet trajectory as well as blood spatter analysis.
What is forensic evidence?
Forensic evidence is a type of evidence that we use scientific methods back in the FBI lab to basically look at like the ballistics. You can look at DNA testing and blood testing, and they can take that evidence to help a case basically support whether a person's guilty or innocent of the crime.
So did you take any classes in school that led you to your path?
I did. I took science very heavily when I was in high school. I really liked biology classes and chemistry classes. I also did the math classes because they kind of support hand in hand. And then I went on to undergrad and studied science again, so many, many, many more classes in science. And eventually I went to graduate school and studied biology and genetics.
It's really interesting. I never would have thought about that.
Yeah. So Dorian, would you like to take a little bit of a closer look at the scene we have here today?
I'd love to.
All right. So Dorian, here we're looking at the scene that the evidence response team is currently processing. And you see that they are taking some pretty precise measurements on these items of evidence that they've identified with these little tent markers. And I've been told that they have several footprints there in the mud, as well as a shirt that's labeled on the label 100% polyester, and then a partial sleeve that they believe is torn from that shirt there.
So I noticed that all the people here are wearing some serious equipment to protect themselves. Why is that?
So they are dressed like this in order to prevent any contamination of the evidence. When we respond to scenes, we always are going to be wearing gloves, and typically we'll wear what they call, these are Tyvek suits, which is kind of like a plastic to not only protect them from leaving anything behind on the scene, such as like a hair that might be on my shirt. I don't want to leave myself into the scene, as well as just maintaining the evidence and making sure it's preserved properly and clean.
So do any of these pieces of evidence stick out to you particularly?
Item number 5 is the kind of torn sleeve from number 4, we believe. And on item number 5, I've been told that there's a hair follicle that is of interest, because that is something that we can take and try to help identify further the species it might be from, whether it's an animal or from, a human. And then there's also a reddish colored stain on that.
So what would be the next step in this procedure?
The next step, once our team is done, they're going to collect all this evidence, bag it, and send it back to the FBI lab, where the lab will then test further.
Thanks for all your help in explaining this stuff. There's a lot that goes into it.
There is. Thank you for coming to see it.
So we found this piece of a shirt sleeve, which, among other things, has some hair follicles and a red stain on it. We strongly believe this was left behind by Anonymous 99. And since it's physical evidence, there's a pretty good chance we can get it sent off to the lab and find something in or on it that can lead us to the true identity of Anonymous 99. Alex, I'm going to send this off to the lab, but does this help us rule out any other suspects?
Thanks, Dorian. Wow, what a huge breakthrough. We're gonna get this person soon. And to start, let's try to narrow down our list of suspects. But for that, I'm gonna need your help by casting your vote. So now that we know more information that Dorian has provided, we can use that information to eliminate one of our suspects from consideration. To cast your vote, either visit pollev.com/IQTV on any browser, or by texting a keyword to 22333. If you think we should eliminate Jermaine, the keyword is Jermaine. Jermaine 1 actually. Hamilton, Hamilton 2. Cleo, Cleo 3. Caitlin, Caitlin 4. And Dude is Dude 5. For more information on these suspects, we provided a handy research sheet like this that breaks down all we know about these suspects and the evidence found. If you don't already have yours printed out, it's available under the resources button on the webpage. Also, we'll be featuring their information on screen while you vote. So come on, hurry up and get your votes in. We don't have much time. Also, if you have any questions for us here at the Jet HQ, especially for our guests from the FBI, you can always send us a question by clicking the Ask a Question button on this webpage, or by sending an email to questions@aptv.org. Now, while you're trying to decide, we're going to take a quick moment and review what we know so far about the Anonymous 99. So, most importantly, we know that the sleeve is made of polyester. Hopefully that little bit of information will go a long way in helping us catch this crook. Now, how are you? Are you okay, Clark?
Yeah, I think this gas is finally wearing off. I don't feel compelled to organize my sock drawer anymore for the third time.
Oh, well, good. Well, now you can finally help me ask some questions to our FBI guest. Thank you. So let's introduce Miss Heather Thu of the FBI's Evidence Response Unit. Thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me here.
Of course. Clark, are there any questions?
Yeah, here's one from Chase from Willard, Ohio. What happens if evidence is contaminated at the crime scene?
Oh, great question, Chase. So we try really hard not to contaminate any evidence at a crime scene, right? So you saw that our team might use lots of personal protective equipment like the Tyvek suit, like gloves, even booties, to keep our evidence, our DNA, our hair, trace, and things like that from contaminating a crime scene. So we try really hard. And the way that we handle evidence and package it is really great, and we train really hard to do those things right. So we try not to contaminate things. But if we found that something did happen and something was contaminated, well, then we probably just wouldn't be able to use that evidence in court. But that's why we always look really hard for lots of sources of evidence at a scene and make sure that we treat them all correctly, so we have lots to go with to court.
Good. Yeah, we wouldn't want to have to eliminate anything because we're being sloppy. Let's see if we have another question.
Yeah, here's one. Tara from Athens, Alabama asks, what is Tyvek and why can't suits be made out of other fabric?
Oh, good question. So our Tyvek suits are made out of a plastic fabric, and they're breathable so that we're more comfortable wearing them, but they also are a barrier for any liquids to come in so that we're protected ourselves from anything that might be at the scene like liquid blood. So we don't want to be contaminated with that ourselves. But there are other suits that we do use, and in fact we have some of our members of our evidence response team are specially trained. They're called our hazardous evidence response team, and they're specially trained to wear specialized suits and work in an environment that's very hazardous, such with chemicals or radiological materials in them, and recover evidence from those types of scenes. So they might wear a different kind of suit other than Tyvek's.
All right, guys, we got to check in with these polls. So again, the question is, who do we think is not Anonymous 99? Seems like most people think it's not Caitlin. Maybe we have time for one more question?
Yeah, here's one from Connor in Huntsville, Alabama. He asks, what do you need to major in to become a forensic scientist?
Oh, what a great question. So there's all different kinds of disciplines that can be used in forensic science. We use biology, chemistry, physics, anthropology, all of those different kinds of sciences. So I always recommend do what you love, do what is interesting to you, and you'll be really great at it that way. And the FBI hires all kinds of scientists to work at the FBI lab.
That's good to know.
Yeah.
All right, let's see what we think on these polls. So again, the question, who is not Anonymous 99?
So, you think you have me on the ropes, huh? Well, to quote my personal hero Darth Vader, do not underestimate my power. You may have narrowed it down to 4 suspects, and you may have found something I may or may not have left behind. But how about a little distraction? Unless you answer my little question, I will release Chronic X over the entire south of the United States. You're gonna wish you weren't in Dixie anymore.
Oh no! Jet Nation, We gotta stop this. It's up to you. Now let's look at the question. Why is it important for the ERT to wear Tyvek suits? To send in your answer to this question, be sure to visit pollev.com/IQTV or text a keyword to 22333. If you think they wear the suits to protect them from contaminating the crime scene, the keyword is contaminate. If you think it's to avoid spreading chemicals all over the lab, the keyword is chemicals. And if you think it's to stay chic with the current Parisian fashion trends, the keyword is fashion. While we wait, Clark, do we have any more questions?
Yeah, here's one from Teresa in Birmingham, Alabama. She asks, is it hard being a forensic scientist?
You know what? It takes a lot of years of study and a kind of a dedication to being a scientist and thinking like a scientist, but it's really not hard, especially when you like science. Like I said, find something that you love to do, and it won't feel like work that way, right? So a lot of the FBI laboratory examiners love what they do, and they're very good at it too. So it doesn't make it hard that way. Some things are more complicated, but not difficult, right?
And how long did you know that you wanted to be a forensic scientist for?
Oh man, when I was in high school, actually, I really loved science. I was really inspired by my science teachers, and so I went into anthropology and archaeology, and then I got my master's in biology. So that was, the course that took me to being an FBI agent. But there's lots of other ways to be an agent or an examiner at the lab.
Nice. It's nice to know there's so many different fields. So let's see what's going on with these poll results. Okay, it looks like to protect from contaminating the crime scene is still pretty much in the win.
Oh, you people think you're just so clever, don't you? Especially you, Chase, in Willard, Ohio. Probably head of your class, real brainiac. Well, you may have saved the South, fine. But there's still plenty of the country left to wreak my havoc on.
Okay guys, so we still have to figure out who this anonymous 99 is. So the next step is to see how our physical evidence from the crime scene is doing at the FBI's crime lab. So we're going to check in with Kirsten, who's with the FBI Trace Evidence Team, to try to find out more about this culprit.
Hey Jet Agents, I'm here at the FBI Laboratory in Huntsville, Alabama. Located on Redstone Arsenal, this sprawling offshoot of the FBI's main crime lab in Quantico, Virginia is still getting bigger. Our first stop is at the Trace Evidence Unit. The TEU is responsible for identifying and comparing specific trace materials. They evaluate physical evidence for items such as hair follicles and fibers that could be transferred while a crime is being committed that give clues and context to who committed the crime. The TEU is responsible for finding sometimes impossibly small pieces of physical evidence. So, in other words, these guys would have no problem finding a needle in a haystack. I'm here with Adam Richard, Forensic Examiner at the Trace Evidence Department, who are currently going over our evidence for more clues. Thanks for talking with us today.
Glad to be here, Kirsten.
So, what do you do here at the FBI?
Well, my title is a Forensic Examiner, and I'm actually a hair and fiber specialist.
Okay, so what do you do at the Trace Evidence Unit?
Well, trace evidence, and really the analysis of trace evidence, is based on this concept called Locard's exchange principle. Edmond Locard was a scientist in France in the early 20th century, and he was the first person to really observe that anytime people, places, or objects come into contact with one another, they have a tendency to exchange small particles between them. So Locard's exchange principle is sort of what we operate on when we're examining trace evidence. We're looking for those small particles that might have been transferred between, say, a suspect and a piece of evidence.
How do you go through the process of receiving a piece of evidence and analyzing it?
When evidence first comes into our group, initially it has to be examined. We're looking for that trace evidence. Okay. So that would be step one. We have technicians go over it with a stereo microscope. It's basically a fancy magnifying glass, looking for any hairs, any fibers, bits of soil, broken glass, that sort of thing, paint chips, all of that falls under trace evidence.
Okay.
Anything that they do find, they will mount on glass microscope slides, and then it'll go to the examiners. The examiners will identify what those items are, if they are in fact hairs, if they're fibers, that kind of thing. Once the trace evidence has been identified, if we get any knowns in, say from a possible suspect, we'll do a microscopic comparison of those questioned items from the piece of evidence to the known sample.
Okay. So how do you use science in your analysis?
Pretty much every day. What I do is a combination of biology, especially when you're talking about hairs, talking about animals, and even there are a lot of fibers that are natural fibers, comes from plants. So having an understanding of that biological variation is important. Also, anytime you're dealing with microscopy, you're talking about properties of light. So a real fundamental understanding of how light works is pretty critical to what we do.
How do you identify microfibers and other extremely tiny pieces of physical evidence?
Well, I think I mentioned a second ago, stereo microscopes are sort of our first line in identifying trace evidence. And it's just a matter of being very patient and very meticulous, going over every inch of a piece of evidence, using that magnification to try to locate anything, any foreign objects on that piece of evidence.
Okay. And what classes did you take in school that led you to the trace evidence team?
I have a sort of an unusual background. I
Okay.
actually was an anthropologist before coming to the Bureau. So not only biology classes, but a lot of other physical science classes as well, chemistry, I had to take physics. And all of that comes into play. Interestingly, the very first hair examinations were done by physical anthropologists. So part of what I do has its foundation in anthropology.
Yes. So what can you tell us about the evidence that was recovered by the evidence response team?
Well, if you want to come over here for a second, I took a look at this sleeve earlier and I found that there were actually multiple hairs on it. I pulled those off, mounted them on a glass microscope slide, and determined that they weren't human hairs, they were actually dog hairs.
Okay. Oh, wow. So are there any other things that you can tell us about the dog hair?
Well, I actually compared it to several dog hair samples that we have in our reference collection, and it most closely resembled beagle hair.
So now that we know that this is beagle hair, where do we go from here and what are the next steps?
Well, we'll hold on to the microscope slides with the hair just in case a known sample ever gets submitted for comparison. The sleeve is on its way to chemistry for further analysis.
Okay. So, after careful examination, the most important piece of new evidence we found was dog hair. Beagle hair, to be precise. But we still don't know what that red stain's all about. For that, we'll have to go to another department here, the chemistry department. But before we do that, Alex, is there any way we can narrow down our list of suspects more with this new information?
Thanks, Kirsten. Another great breakthrough. Okay, so let's open up another poll to narrow down our list of suspects. And again, I'm gonna need you to cast your vote to bring the total down to only 3. So apparently our villain has some kind of connection to a beagle. Let's see if we can use this revelation to eliminate another one of our suspects. So vote now. And again, if you have any questions for our awesome visitors from the FBI, you can send us a question by clicking the Ask a Question button on this webpage, or by sending an email to questions@aptv.org. So, while you're digging through evidence, let's again take a look at what we know so far about this situation. So, we know that the sleeve is made of polyester and that the beagle hair is on the sleeve. So it seems as if some of our suspects have some sort of daily interaction with dogs. But is this fact about the beagle hair a clue at all? Come on, decide quick. But in the meantime, let me introduce our next guest from the FBI. We have Miss Madeline Montgomery, who's the unit chief of the FBI's chemistry unit. Oh my goodness, thank you so much, Madeline.
It's my pleasure.
Thank you. So, Clark, let's see if we have any questions.
Yeah, here's one. Jacob asks from Indianapolis, How long can it take for evidence to come back from testing from the crime lab?
Well, that's a very good question. It really depends on the evidence. Some pieces of evidence may just go to one specialist for testing, and that testing might come back rather quickly. But some pieces of evidence might have to go through several different units in the lab to several different experts, and that could take weeks in some cases.
For pieces like the beagle hair, how long do you think that would take?
Well, once the examiner received the item and was able to take a look at it, if it was one item like that, it would be something they could do within a day for sure.
Good. All right, let's see what's going on with these polls. So again, the question is, who is not Anonymous 99? And it seems like people think Dude is not. All right, do we have time for one more question?
Yeah, we do. Lincoln asks from Nebraska, Adam mentioned Lockhardt's exchange principle. Can you tell us more about that?
Sure. So Lockhardt's exchange principle means that when two people come into contact, trace evidence is likely to transfer from one person to the next. It can also happen from an animal to a person. So I have a cat at home, and if I pet my cat, I'll often have cat hair then on my hand. And then if I were to shake your hand, I could transfer that cat hair from my hand to your hand.
True. All right, let's check in on these poll results. Wow. A lot of people think Dude is not the culprit.
You think I'm afraid? I'm a Vulcan. And like my other personal hero, Spock, and we have no capacity for fear. There's still 3 suspects left, and I still have 2 regions left to wreak my havoc upon. That is, unless you can stop me and answer this question, I'll release Chronic X over the entire North. So riddle me this, jet agents, if you dare.
Yet again, the stakes just got higher. Oh, we've got to stop this madness. Look, this time, our question is, what branch of science is not used when evaluating the hair follicle? To tell us what you think, remember, visit pollev.com/IQTV or text a keyword to 22333. If you think they don't use the branch of chemistry, the word is chemistry. If you think it's not biology, the keyword is biology. And if you think they don't use physics, the keyword is physics 3. And again, while we wait, Clark, do we have any more questions?
Yeah, here's one from Nielsen is asking it from Weeki Wachee, Florida. Nielsen asks, can you collect evidence if it is in the form of a gas?
Well, you can, and that is certainly one of the hardest types of evidence to collect. But we do have sample containers that are able to collect a gas and then seal very, very tightly so the gas can't escape.
I see how you have to be quick on that. All right, let's get these poll results. So again, what branch of science is not used when evaluating the hair follicle? And a lot of people seem to think it's physics.
Wrong. My Chronic X is worse than a nor'easter, and all the children who live in the North will now be affected by my Chronic X. Let the dark side reign. Just one more to go.
Actually, the answer is not physics. Can you please tell us why?
Sure, this was actually a pretty tricky question, but physics is used in the analysis of hair samples because the examiner is going to use a microscope, and that microscope uses light. And it's through the process of physics that light is used to look under a microscope.
I see. Okay, well, listen, we are very close to finding out who this Anonymous 99 character really is. So the next step is to learn what that strange red stain is in hopes that it can get us more clues. And to do that, let's check in with Agent Daphne, who's with the chemistry team at the FBI Crime Lab. Daphne?
Thanks, Alex. And yeah, I'm with the chemistry team who's going to prove to you that all that chemistry stuff you learn in school is actually very relevant to your everyday lives and crucial to unlocking all the secrets the bad guys try to conceal. Chemistry is a branch of science that deals with the identification of the substances of which matter is composed, and at the FBI Crime Lab, chemistry is the branch of amazing forensic experts who can break down mysterious substances to determine what they are made up from, where those substances might have come from, and how their reactions can make the substance volatile. Chemistry is everywhere in the world, all around us, so having the skills to understand this vastly important branch of science can also be priceless in the pursuit of stopping crime. You've probably seen Batman or other superheroes use test tubes or beakers to try to solve their fictional crimes. I mean, Barry Allen, the Flash, is even a police scientist, but the art of using chemistry to solve crimes isn't comic book fiction like the Batwing or the Speed Force. It's real, and the crime fighters who use it in the pursuit of justice are very real too. I am here with Gina Guerrera, who is a forensic chemist at the FBI Crime Lab. She's going to give us some insight as to why chemistry is so important in crime solving. Thank you so much for helping us out.
Thank you guys for coming in and joining us.
So can you tell me exactly what the chemistry department does here at the Crime Lab?
So here at the chemistry department, we test unidentified chemicals or materials that are collected at crime scenes that can then be given to the investigators, where they can take that information and actually use it to help them solve the crime.
So what's your role in this?
So what we do at the FBI specifically is I identify chemicals and materials, we test them, and then we try to determine what they are.
So when you receive a piece of evidence, what do you do with it? How do you approach analyzing what it is?
Okay, so we receive our evidence. It's actually in a sealed package. And we usually have initials across the seal so that we know, whoever packaged it, that it hasn't been gotten into, so that we know that it's okay when it comes into us. It's not been contaminated or anything like that. We approach the evidence by first doing a visual exam. So we'll take a look at it, whatever we can see with just our eyes. We'll note color, consistency, note if there's any type of odor. After that, we'll actually put it under a microscope, and that'll help us see things that we can't see with just our eyes. And that we'll be able to take note if there's a mixture, we'll look at the shape, the texture, if it's wet, anything like that. And then after that, we can put it on a series of tools that we call here in the laboratory instruments. And that'll help us analyze what could possibly be in that unidentified chemical. And that'll give us more chemical information.
So how is science used in the lab when you're using these instruments?
Okay. So science used for us is we focus on chemistry and identifying chemicals. So chemistry is the study of matter, and matter is anything that takes up space and has mass. So you are matter, I'm matter, the air, the table, and we use the instruments to analyze that matter. Okay, and then we can receive chemical information from that. So it actually gives us a sort of what we call chemical fingerprint. So just as we have all different fingerprints, chemicals have their own type of unique fingerprint. We also look at elements that can make up the unknown chemical, and elements are like the building blocks of matter. So just as you might see in a periodic table, those are different elements that we can look at.
What is one of your favorite techniques to use in the lab?
One of my favorite techniques to use in the lab is called Fourier transform infrared spectroscopy, and that's commonly known as FTIR. And that's used on an instrument that's called an FTIR spectrometer. And what that instrument does is it actually uses a special form of light to interact with the material, and then we get a characteristic picture, which I'll be able to show you later on.
So can you tell us what you found about the evidence that we gave you?
Sure, absolutely. So after looking at the evidence, we were able to cut a piece of the stain out. We put it into a test tube. We then added a solvent, which is actually a liquid that's just going to pull the components out of the stain into the solution. We then vortexed it, which is this instrument right here, to mix it up. And then we were able to put it into a centrifuge, which just rotates and it pulls any solid or anything that's floating in the liquid straight to the bottom. That way we could separate out the liquid. And then we put the solid on the FTIR spectrometer that I was speaking about earlier. And this is actually characteristic picture that we get that we call a spectrum. We were then able to look in the library and see that it matched this red dye right here.
I think we might have a breakthrough, Alex. It turns out that this stain is a concentrated form of a proprietary food dye that could have only stained the clothes of somebody working in the lab that it was created in. This dye is only used in, believe it or not, a handful of sports drinks, so only someone with a chemistry background working with the proprietary food dye could actually have gotten the stain. Do you think we have enough information to catch this crook?
Wow, amazing, Daphne. Oh yes, we are so close. Well, you guys know the drill, so let's keep narrowing down our list by casting your vote. So the red dye came from someone who works for the sports drink company. I hope this break helps us eliminate another suspect. As always, to cast your vote, either visit pollev.com/IQTV on any browser, or by texting a keyword to 22333. And again, if you have any questions for Heather from the FBI, please send us a question by clicking the Ask a Question button on this webpage, or by sending an email to questions@aptv.org. We keep finding out more and more and getting closer and closer. But while you're casting your votes, let's review once more what we already know about Anonymous 99. So we know that the sleeve is made of polyester, that there is some sort of beagle hair on the sleeve, and that the red dye from the stain on the sleeve is only used in making sports drinks. I also think it's worth pointing out that every time Anonymous 99 chimes in to taunt us, he seems to make a Star Wars or Star Trek reference. I mean, can that help us at all? Come on, make a decision. Think fast. But while you're voting, Madeline Montgomery from the FBI is still with us. So Clark, tell me, are there any more questions?
Yeah, here's one. Jalen from St. Aldebert School asks, how do you get a hold of the person when you find fingerprints or anything that has to do with the crime?
Well, the FBI has databases that have some people's fingerprints in them. So once someone is identified as a suspect, then that information will go back to the field agents, and it would be their job to locate the person and arrest them if they were indeed the person that was suspected of a crime.
Interesting. Guess you don't want to have your fingerprints there already. It makes matters even worse.
Yes,
Okay, anything else?
Yeah, here's one from Miss Adams' 8th grade science class. They say, we are currently studying chromatography in our science class. How does the FBI use chromatography in solving crimes?
Chromatography is a very important science in the area of chemistry, and we use it in the separation of all kinds of complex mixtures, whether we're trying to identify an explosive that may have been used in a bombing or identify a red stain that's found on a piece of clothing.
Interesting. All right, guys, let's check out these poll results. All right, again, who is not Anonymous 99? Seems like most think Jermaine is not.
All right, I am losing my patience. You think you can make me sweat? How about I make the West sweat in a drought of hysteria brought on by the release of my Chronic X? It'll spread like Imperial stormtroopers marching across the galaxy. This time, you won't stop me. You can't answer my question, and I'll be able to release Chronic X over the entire West.
Okay, the final region. We can do this, guys. Our final question is, why does the forensic chemist use a centrifuge to remove dye from the sleeve? To tell us what you think, remember, you're going to visit pollev.com/IQTV or text a keyword to 22333. If you think she used the centrifuge because dizzy evidence is easier to analyze, the keyword is analyze. If you think it's to isolate a pure solution of the evidence, the keyword is isolate. And if you think it prevents evaporation of the evidence, the keyword is evaporation. And again, while we wait, Clark, are there any more questions?
Yeah, here's one. Cole Robertson from Centray, Alabama asks, what kind of instruments/machines do people in the lab use?
Well, we have lots and lots of different types of diverse instruments and equipment at the laboratory. We have microscopes. We have microscopes that you use light to look at a piece of evidence, and we have microscopes that use a beam of energy to really drill down deep and look at the elemental compounds that are in something. We have mass spectrometers, which are called the chemical fingerprint machines that are used to look for different chemicals.
In your experience, what would you say that the most used machine or instrument in the lab is?
You know, quite frankly, it's probably our eyes. Our eyes are the most important piece of equipment that we have in the laboratory. The first thing we have to do is really look at the evidence, make sure it's sealed properly as it's come in from the field, and then look to see if there's anything unusual about it. And that's probably the most important instrument we use.
Wow, her eyes tell everything. All right, let's get these results in. So again, why does the forensic chemist use a centrifuge to remove dye from the sleeve? And most think it's to isolate a pure solution of the evidence.
No, no, no! Well, you haven't seen the last of me, especially Miss Monahan's 6th grade class. I see you there in Troy. Unless you unmask me, I will bide my time and strike again. As the Klingons believe, vengeance is best served when cold.
We are simply running out of time. No, we have to stop this threat for once and for all. We have to unmask him or her. Now remember, there are only 2 suspects left. Can you think back to what we learned about Anonymous 99 to help you decide who he or she really is? Let's review. Again, we know that the sleeve is made of polyester. We know that there's a beagle hair on the sleeve, and that the red dye from the stain on the sleeve is only used in making sports drinks. So cast your final votes. Do it now. The question is a little bit different this time. Remember, we're asking for who you think Anonymous 99 is, not who he or she is not. The keywords are a little different, and though we've narrowed down the list of suspects to only 2, if you think that we actually eliminated the wrong person along the way, you can still vote for all 5 suspects. To vote for Jermaine, the keyword is Jermaine 1-1. Hamilton, Hamilton 2-2. Cleo, Cleo 3-3. Caitlin, Caitlin is 4-4. And Dude is Dude 5-5. Okay, while our agents are casting their final votes, Clark, are there any final questions for Miss Madeline?
Yeah, here's one from Tim Farhat in Miami, Florida. He asks, is it possible to figure out how old the stain on the sleeve is?
No, it wouldn't be possible to determine the age of a stain. We might have an idea that it had been there a very long time if it looked degraded, but it would be a guess. It wouldn't be a scientific conclusion.
Interesting. Any other questions?
Yeah, here's one more from Sam Ham in Alabama. He asks, what is the toughest evidence to detect?
That's a good one, too.
I don't know if I should give that evidence out to Anonymous 99. There are all different types of evidence, and probably the hardest evidence is often evidence that is really old. If it's something that is an investigation from a long time that we're going back to revisit because new evidence may have come up, sometimes the evidence can be degraded, and that can be very, very tough.
And that's why we got to get to the bottom of this ASAP. All right, guys, let's figure out these poll results. So again, who is Anonymous 99? Wow. Almost everyone thinks it's Hamilton.
No! This won't stop me. I will be back. It may be 10 to 20 years, but I'll be back, and I will get you all.
Wow. Well, Madeline, do you have any final thoughts on our work today?
Well, I think everyone that cooperated today needs to be congratulated on the work they did. They found the evidence at the scene, and they figured out that the beagle hair, as well as that very unique red dye, led to the right suspect, which was Hamilton. So well done.
Great. Thank you. All right. Well, thanks, JET agents, for all your amazing work. And thank you to all of our field agents for their efforts in helping unmask Anonymous 99. And of course, we have to thank our real-life FBI experts in the field and in our HQ guests, Heather Thew and Madeline Montgomery. Until next time, JET Nation.
Warning. This encrypted confidential broadcast of the Junior Enigma team will self-destruct in 3, 2, 1.